If you're doing therapy with child abuse families, the whole point is to get the family back together. Probably Child Protection Services has come in, probably the kids have been removed, or there's a threat to remove them, and the trick is to get things back together so it's safe enough to stay. Well, if you're a writer and you're hearing those stories all the time, the two worlds collide. Because you can't take a story out of a therapy session and stick it in a book because it's confidential. But you hear a bunch of stories, 5, 10, 100, and the similarities in people's lives, the similarities in the way people react to being treated badly become part of what you know. And what you know is what you write. Well, like I said, because I know most of my stories are going to have a pretty tough core to them, at the same time that that's all going on, I'm looking around for funny stuff. Well, I'm 4 or 5 years into my tenure down in Oakland in this alternative school, and I taught there for 3 or 4 years, and then I was made the director because nobody else wanted that job. And it's my first day as director in the school year, and I'm sitting in my office and I'm trying to get everything ready, and I'm doing a bunch of paperwork, and I'm running around the school trying to get things going. Sit back down, writing some stuff out, and I feel this kind of presence in the room. And I look up, and there's this 8th grader. He's about almost 6 feet tall, real thin, just kind of standing there like this, looking at me. And I said, "Hey," I said, "what's your name?" In this real deep voice, and he said, "Telephone Man." I said, "Your parents named you Telephone Man?" And he looked at me like I was just stupid. And the door opens up and his dad comes in and he says, "Well, his name isn't really Telephone Man, his name's Craig, but he's kind of got this thing about telephones and he doesn't answer anything but Telephone Man. So you want to get his attention, call him Telephone Man." I said, "I can do that." Well, I get why they call him Telephone Man, because he's standing there and he has a full set of telephone equipment strapped around his waist. And he wears like a gun, like a gunslinger thing. He's got this leather belt, and this is the 70s, so there are no cell phones. There's a dialer, the dialing phone. He's got a dialer stuck in here, looks like a 6-gun. He's got needle nose pliers here. He's got all the gizmos you need to fix telephones and wires and stuff. And there he is. He's Telephone Man. Now, Telephone Man could go 3 weeks without talking to anybody, because if you didn't want to talk to him about telephones, he did not want to talk to you. He did not have friends. He did not do his homework. He sat around and thought about telephones, or he sat around and messed with telephones. That was it. If you ever got him in the office and he got around your telephones, you had to pry him loose. Because he could actually go in and he knew where every wire went. He could give you extra services on your telephone. This kid knew telephone. Well, like I say, he can go forever without talking to anybody. And he's shy, painfully shy, quiet. There's a door back here, and I'm standing talking to you, and Telephone Man comes through that door. I would never hear the door open. I would never hear the door close, no click, no nothing. Telephone Man would kind of come in and he'd just kind of walk along the wall like this. And he was kind of feeling pretty comfortable, and then he loved the creak of the leather in that telephone belt, and he'd stand there like this, "Man, if you mess with me, I will dial you up." Whoa, Telephone Man. Like I say, most of the time, dead quiet. Unless you mess with his telephone stuff. If you mess with his telephone stuff, he goes nuclear. I mean, you can see the cloud go over his head. He wants you dead. He wants your body parts spread around the school, and wants Crutcher to do it because he runs this stinking place, and he would come looking for me. Well, the problem with the school is it's a real small school, and all the classrooms are on one side of the building, and there are windows in all the classrooms, and it looks out on the parking lot. So if there's a strange car in the parking lot, all the kids look out there and they see that and they think, well, there's got to be a parent someplace in the school, and they love to mess with me. So that's when they would mess Telephone Man, get him mad. And all you had to do, if you're sitting in class and you're bored, you want something to happen, just reach over and hit that dialer. Telephone Man goes just ballistic. It'll be 10 minutes before the teacher can get things back in order, and by then Telephone Man is storming down his office and he wants justice. Well, I'm sitting in my office one day and I get this telephone call from this mom. Her last name was Cosimoto. I remember Mrs. Cosimoto and her daughter Susie. Susie was a sophomore, and Susie was in school over at Oakland Tech. And Susie had just gotten into her 3rd fight over at Oakland Tech, and it wasn't even Thanksgiving yet, and she had caused all of them. And she was getting expelled. And Kazumoto called me up and she said, I got to get her in school before the day's over, because if she's not in school before the day's over, she's got to go to juvie. I said, well, it kind of sounds like a good place for her. Why don't you bring her over and check things out? They show up. We're walking through the hall. Susie's mom was being really just nice and polite. She was a really nice lady anyway. She just wants to get Susie in. Susie's walking down the hall behind us like looking for somebody to punch. I mean, she made me nervous. We walk around, and I take them into the office to do the paperwork. Now, when I take somebody in the office during the day, and I know telephone man's in school, I go into the office, I speed things up. Because I do not want telephone man coming down and messing up my day, because he's really hard to explain. So we're in there, and we're doing the paperwork, and it looks like a pretty good deal, and we're getting her class schedule all fixed out, and I'm like writing like a madman, and I think, I'm like a minute away from getting them out of there. Boy, I did it. You know, they're gone. And as I think it, I hear these big old telephone boots coming down the hall, and telephone man is yelling my name, and he's going berserk. And I'm going, oh, don't let this happen. Please don't let this happen. How am I going to get the telephone man to these people? And I had a rule for myself, a telephone man rule. And the telephone man, actually I had a couple. Big telephone man rule was, if I'm in the building, if I'm in my office, and telephone man is anywhere in the building, don't let the office door shut all the way. Because when telephone man is mad, he doesn't use the knob. He just comes in foot first. And he had already cracked 2 doors, like top to bottom. So the trick is, leave the door ajar just a little bit, so when he kicks it, it just flies open. The second rule is, never let anybody sit in the arc of the swing of the door, because it'll kill them. So Susie and her mom are over here on the couch, door opens this way, telephone man's coming, and I'm just like, well, I hear the outer office door come flying open, the inner office door comes flying open, and telephone man is standing there, and I mean, he is beat red. You could take his pulse right here. And he does the one thing he can do better than fix telephones. This guy can cuss better than anybody you ever heard. I mean, he can give you a string of them this long with no repeats. And on this day, he is on his game. He just blasts loose, and I'm going, whoa, telephone man. That's like poetry. So I think I'm going to get even with him, right? So I introduce him. But when telephone man's this mad, you're not going to embarrass him. He stands there, and he looks at Susie, and he looks at her mom, and he looks at Susie again, and then he says it one more time, and he storms out. Well, telephone man was there for 5 years. And I had telephone man rules for the teachers, too. There's really only one telephone man rule for the teachers. The telephone man rule for the teacher was, because those classes all looked out in the parking lot, if the real telephone guy, like the AT&T guy, the repairman, came to fix our phone, you got to let telephone man go. Because he would look out there and see that AT&T truck, and it was like a chariot of God. And God had come to school, and telephone man was going to go find him. Well, the telephone guy hated him because he would follow him around and criticize his work, right? The guy gets the top off the phone, he's working on the phone, and the telephone man is just standing right over him like this. What's the matter with you? Didn't you go to telephone school? That's why it doesn't go there. And the guy's just fixing the phone as fast as he can, trying to leave. Graduation day finally comes. 5 years later, the telephone man has graduated from high school. We had to help him a little. He's graduating. He wants the best stuff. He wants the best cap and gown. We've got the caps and gowns in this little closet. He comes to school an hour before graduation because he wants to skin. Goes back to the closet, tries on all the little mortarboard caps, gets them to fit perfectly, gets the gowns. He wants the gown to go right down to the top of his shoe. It's supposed to fit even. Gets it on there. Looks in the mirror, puts the telephone stuff around the outside of the gown, and that's how he goes through graduation. Nobody says a word. Well, I'm thinking, you know, he owes me. This guy has made my life a little bit strange for about 5 years. I got to use him as a character in a book someplace. I had started writing, left the school, went up to Spokane, started working on the Abuse and Neglect Project. Don't really want to do a whole novel about Telephone Man, because if I do a whole novel about Telephone Man, it takes me about a year to write a novel. That means I got Telephone Man right here in my frontal lobe for a year. I'm going to need mental health